This is Gemara in Gittin Daf Lamed Ches. And we're holding on Lamed Zayin Midbeis on the third wide line. We pulled up a little bit short, so let's just remind ourselves. We began the Gemara yesterday, which the Gemara asked, what is the case of the Mishnah? In the Mishnah, we discussed an Eved Shenishba Upaduhu. We have an Eved that was taken captive and now he's being ransomed. And the Mishnah differentiated whether he is Imlu Shom Eved, if he's being ransomed to be an Eved, he works. To be a free man, he does not work. Rashbag said in all cases, he's still Yishtabed. So we're trying to figure out what is the case in the Mishnah. B'maya askinon. The Gemara began. Then why is he not working? The owner was never miyayish. If an owner is not miyayish, he still retains ownership. So must be the owner was miyayish, says the Gemara. So then we don't understand. So then amay mishtabid, if you redeem him l'sham eved, who cares? The owner was miyayish. So yesterday we said the teretz of Abaye, and now we pick it up on the third wide line with the teretz of Rava. Rava Amar says, Rava la'ilam na'achar yish. Really, we're discussing a case in which the original owner was miyayish. He gave up hope of ever getting back this eved. Ul'sham eved yishtabed. And when the Mishnah said if he's ransomed to be an eved, yishtabed, he works. What does that mean? Le rabbi sheni. It means he's an eved to the new master. It's the one that redeems him. What does that mean? Asks the Gemara, and the Gemara explains. I redeemed him to be a free man. Of course, it doesn't work for me. Because the Maisa, the original owner, has been miyayish. That is how Rava explains the Mishnah. Rava continues, and Rashbag Oimer, Rishimon Yamliel concluded the Mishnah, and he taught us Yishtabed. In all scenarios, even though it's Lachar Yush, the halacha is he remains a slave to the first master. Why? Kedech Chizkiya Damer Chizkiya Nema Amru Benkach Ubenkach Yishtabed. What is the reason of Rav Shimon Gamliel? The reason is, Chizkiya says it's almost a kenas of sorts, that we don't want every slave to give himself up to the warriors, to the battle, and thereby remove himself from the master. So in order to counteract that, they said that in all scenarios, even La'achar Yush, the Eved goes back to his original master. Continues the Gemara Meisvei. The Gemara is a kasha and Rava. Amr lehem Rashbag. They said, Rav Shimon Gamliel told the Rabbanon, Kishem Shemitzah Liftos as Ben Chayrin, Kach Mitzah Liftos as Avadim. Rav Shimon Gamliel is commenting to the Chachamim. Rav Shimon Gamliel, hold that Eved stays in Eved. You, the Chachamim, hold not. Why not? Just like you have a mitzvah to redeem as Ben Chayrin, you have a mitzvah to redeem an Eved. That is the statement of Rav Shimon Gamliel. And from his statement, we're going to figure out what's going on. Says the Gemara. Which was the first answer. We're discussing the owner was not miyayish yet. So I understand kishem. What is the kishem according to Abaye? It makes a lot of sense. That just like it says Rav Shimon Gamliel, people are not going to refrain from being paidu, from ransoming the slaves. Why? Because there's a mitzvah. But according to Rava, hi kishem. It's not kishem. According to Rava, what was the reason that Rav Shimon Gamliel says you stay in Eved? Not because of this new reason of kishem that we need people to redeem, but rather is misham the chizkiyo. It's a totally different reason, as we just said. It's more of a kenas. So Amr L'cha Rava responds, Rashbag lo yave yada ma'ikami Rabbanon. Rav Shimon Gamliel was unsure what the Rabbanon meant. V'hachi kamer lehu, and this is what he says. If you're saying that it's before Yosh, hainu kishem. So it's basically multiple choice. Rav Shimon Gamliel, according to Rava, he's unsure as to the reasoning. Says the Gemara that Rava learned that when one is padu the Eved to be an Eved, he stays an Eved. Says the Gemara, 4 lines on the bottom of Lamed Zayin and Beis. L'Rava da'amar la'achar yosh u'l'Rabbi Sheni, he becomes an Eved. Rabbi Sheni miman kanilu. How does this second master? Let's remind ourselves. An Eved is captured. I, a seemingly innocent citizen, come and I ransom the Eved. Says Rava, I now get that Eved. Where was I kind of the Eved? Says the Gemara, Mishabai, from the captors that I redeemed him. Shabai Gufa Mika Kanile. Where do the captors acquire the Eved? Answers the Gemara, in Kanile Lamaise Yadav, they acquire the Eved for his work. Tamar Reish Lakish, Menayim Na'akom Shekaina is Akom Lamaise Yadav. The Shavai, those who capture the Eved, we're assuming are Goyim. So how do I know that one guy could be kaina, could acquire another guy for his maisi yadayim, for his work, that which he produces? Shenamar v'gamane atoshav ha'garim mimachem, mehem tiknu, from them you shall acquire. Atem, you yidin, kaina mehem could acquire the gayim. V'lohem kaina michem, but they cannot, a guy cannot acquire a yid. V'lohem kainim zemizeh, and they as well cannot acquire one from the other. So Yachol continues Reish Lakish on the second line, Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. Lo yignu zeh. You would think that the Goyim cannot acquire one from another. So the Gemara now, as often does in the middle of a rendition of this Brisa, the Gemara interjects. Says the Gemara, what? Yachol, lo yiknu zeh. You would think that they're not kind of one for the other. Hamri, you just taught us. Lo yim kainim zeh mizeh. What's the yachol? They don't acquire one from the other. Yachol, I would think. What are you talking about? You just said that. Says the Gemara, hachi kamar. This is what he meant. Lo yim kainim zeh mizeh ligufai. That one guy cannot acquire from another guy for his body. Yachol, you would think lo yiknu zeh zeh lamaiseh yadav. You cannot acquire even for his handiwork, that which he produces, his wages. Amri Kalva Chaimher. On that detail of one guy being kind from another guy for his Meisi Yadav, for his wages, I'll tell you Kalva Chaimher. Akom Yisrael Kaina. And Akom, a Yisrael, is a Kaina, the guy for his labor. Akom, like Kol Shekain. If a Akom can buy a Yid for his Meisi Yadayim, certainly a guy should be able to buy another guy for his Maisi Yadayim. Says the Gemara, okay, very nice, but 1 second. Maybe that's only, again, we're in the middle of trying to figure out how the captors had a kinyan in this Eved, that when I redeem the Eved, I can get the Eved. So we said it's for the Maisi Yadayim, and one guy is buying another guy for his handiwork. Asks the Gemara, fine, good source, but the Ema, 10 lines down, the first word on line is Kol Shekain. Hani mili bekasba. That's if one Eved is buying another Eved. Asks the Gemara, maybe that only works if it's being done bekasba. If he's buying him with silver, with cash. Avo bechazak aloi, but maybe just by taking a chazak over him, one Eved cannot acquire the next Eved. So Amar Rabba Amanu Mayav Tiaru B'Sichoin. Says Rabba Amanu Mayav, the lands of them were purified literally by Sichoin, meaning that when Sichoin conquered those lands, he took ownership of them, and from here we see that a guy could acquire another area via Chazaka. Says the Gemara, okay, Ashkanakam. Now we've learned that one guy could acquire another guy via chazaka, like Ammon and Moav, that Sichon acquire them via acquiring the land, making a chazaka in the land. Akum Yisrael Minalan, but where do we know that an Akum could acquire a Jew by capture? And the question is, we're talking about an Eved Kenani who has a din of a Yid at some level. So how do we know that the guy could acquire him? Techsev says the Gemara, Vayesh Mimenu Shevi. The Canaanim heard and they made a Malchama with Klal Yisrael and he took them as captives. So here we see that even Yidin could be acquired by the Goyim via Chazaka. And that is how the Gemara is learning that the Shavai, the captors, were able to make a kinyan on this Eved. Amar Rav Shemen bar Abba, Amar Rav Yechman. 13 lines down, the first one in line is Rav Shemen bar Abba. Says Rav Shemen bar Abba in the name of Rav Yechman. Eved shebarach mi beisa asurim. A slave that runs out of jail, Yatzal Cheres, goes free. V'loyoid! And not only that, Because like get shechur, we force his master to write him a get shechur. This statement that's being said over the name of Rav Yechanan, we're going to deal with for a lot of today's daf, and we're going to come back to certain parts of it as well. So says the Gemara Tanan. We learned in a Mishnah. Rashba Gomer ben Kach ben Kach Yishtabed. Our Mishnah says Rav Shimon Gamliel, and of course this is why we just quoted this din, that either way the Eved is a slave. Ve'omer Rav Chanan Rav Yechanan. Kol Makom Sheshana. Rashba the Mishnah saying no aklal. Anytime we have a Shimon Gamliel in our Mishnah, halacha kamaisei chutz from three cases. Arev v'tziyudayin v'raya achreina, except for three different cases: a case of a guarantor, which we'll get to Bava Basra; the case of sidain, which we're going to get to Mirza Shem in about a month's time on Daf Ayin Dalid; and the case of raya achreina, which we'll get to in Sanhedrin. So says the Gemara. Now we go full circle. I understand Abaya, that Abaya is going to say that the din of Rashbag in the Mishnah, that is a din of Lefnei Yush. Vahai, and this din that we're talking about right now is Lachar Yush. But El Rava, according to Rava, Damar Lachar Yush, Kasha de Rav Yechanan, Ad Rav Yechanan. We have a steer in Rav Yechanan. Because if Rav Yechanan is the one that's saying that we always pass like Rav Shimon Gamliel, then how could Rav Yechanan as well be the one? How could it fit with our Mishnah of Lachar Yush? So Rava responds, Taima Mai, Mishum de Chizkiah. What was the whole reason why Rav Shimon Gamliel in the Mishnah said that you always retain the Eved? Was because of Chizkiah's the Kenas. By Reach Shiny. But in this case, what was the case of Rav Yechanan? The Eved ran away, he's running out of jail. Hashta lekatola masar nafshe, if he was willing to risk his life to run out of jail. Do we have to, would he give himself up to the soldiers? Of course not. So therefore the whole concern of Chizkiah doesn't apply. Therefore it's not a stira in Rava, in Rav Shimon Gamliel at all. Continues the Gemara with the story. Amsei de Mar Shmuel ishtabai, the maidservant of Rav Shmuel. Mar Shmuel was taken captive. Parakua l'shem amasa. Shmuel redeemed. I should say Shmuel. Some Yidden redeemed this maidservant to be an amasa, to be a maidservant. V'shadru lei. And they sent her back to Shmuel. So Shalchulei, they sent the following message. Ki Rashbag Sfiralam, we all like Rashbag. At you, Shmuel, Inami Kirabanan Sfir Lacha, even if you all like the Rabbanan, which thereby would seemingly think that this Amasa, this maidservant, should not remain an Eved after we redeemed her, because according to the Rabbanan, she should go free. But they sent a message with her to Shmuel, and now the Shemamasa Bar Kinama. We redeemed her, Nihala, we redeemed her to be a maidservant, we redeemed her to be an Eved. And in that case, the Rabbanan agree that she remains an Eved. Says the Gemara, Ve'enu, and they, those who redeemed this maidservant, Savra Lefnei Yeshavai, they thought that Shmuel wasn't Miyayesh, so they thought by redeeming her to be a maidservant, she's going to go back to her master. V'lohi, it's not true. Really, Shmuel was already Miyayish, and therefore everyone would agree that she does not remain an Eved. Says the Gemara, Shmuel not only did he not keep her as an Eved, but rather he did not even have to write her a Gacherus, because since he was Miyayish, this woman was able to go free on her own. And the Gemara now explains this din of Shmuel. Shmuel at Taimei, we're about 25 lines to the bottom of the Amid. First one line is Shmuel. Shmuel holds Amr Shmuel. So Shmuel holds that this is like a case of Hefker when one is Miyayish. Therefore you don't even have to write a get shechur. Shenemar says the Torah Chlevet Ish Miknas Kesef. Eved Ish V'loi Eved Isha. Does the pasuk only mean an Eved of a man, not of an Eved who is a man, and not an Eved who is a woman? Ella Eved Sheish Lo Rishos the Rabbi an Eved that the master has Rishos on him Kari Eved is called an Eved. Shem Rishos Rabbi Olav in Kari Eved is not considered an Eved. That is the reason why Shmuel held that not only did he not keep this woman as an Amasa, as a maidservant, he didn't even have to write her a get shechur. Continues the Gemara with another story. Amal say the Rabbi Bar Zutra is Rabbi. The maidservant of Rabbi Bar Zutra was captured. Parkeu Tarmudai. There were certain Tarmudians that redeemed her l'shamatz to take her as a wife. Shalch aleid l'didei. So the Rabbanan sent to Rav Abba. Iyeyos. If you want to do what's right, avadata. Shadar la gita de chayrusa. Free this woman. So says the Gemara, what's going on over here? Hey chidami. Idamati barkila. If he's able to ransom her, lamale gita de chayrusa. Why is he freeing her? And if he's not able to ransom her, what's it going to help to send her a get cheros? Lamaisa, these Tarmudim are going to marry this woman. Answers the Gemara, a very psychological chap. Really, the Rabbanim were able to ransom her. So what is the reason? That they told Rav Abba to write a get ashtar shechver. But once Rav Abba wrote a get chayros, Chaburi mechabri adadi, the Yidden are going to get together, uparki law, and they're going to bond together, and they're going to be able to raise the necessary funds to redeem her. So it was all a ploy that people will think that know that she's going to go free, and thereby pledge money to redeem her. Really, he was not able to free her. So why, if he wasn't able to free her, why did he write a get chayros? Says the Gemara, you know why? Because by writing a get chayros, mizla ba'apei, she's going to be mizalzel, she's going to be cheapened in the eyes of the Talmudians, and then umafrik law, and what are they going to do? And they're going to allow her to be ransomed. Says the Gemara, 1 second. V'amar mar, but we've learned the goyim love even the animals of the Yidden more than our wives. So why, if we go and we redeem, if he went and he freed this woman, is it going to make the Talmudim, these goyims, want to ransom, allow her to be ransomed? Explains the Gemara, you know why? In private, yeah, they like even the Jewish animals. But before Hesia, they're embarrassed to say that. We continue 6 lines from the white lines. So now we change topics. A similar topic. There was a maidservant, and the people of Babadisa were acting inappropriately with her. They were doing Yisurim with her. So Amar Abayi said, Abayi loved Amar Rav Yudam Rishmuel, if not for the fact that Rav Yudam Rishmuel taught us that Kol HaMeshacher Avda Yover Ba'aseh, that in freeing an Eved Yover and Issa Daraisa, have a Kaifina Leh, would force them, Lamar, the owner of a Koslik Etta the Charusa, to free her. Because they would free her, they would stop acting inappropriately with this woman. Ravina Amar, Ravina argues and he says, Ki ha moed Rav Yehuda, in this case, Rav Yehuda admits that you're allowed to free this woman and free this Eved, and there's no Issa Daraisa. Why? Mishamilsa di Isura. Ask the Gemara, that's such a Gavaldic Taina. What does Abayi hold? V'Abayi on the first white line, Misham Isura Lai. Does Abayi really hold that because of Issa you can't free them? There was a story with a woman who was part free, part Evet. As we turn over to Lamachesem base, and they forced the master to free her. What's the reason? So you know why? Because minhag hefker naguba. So asks the Gemara, I don't understand. Why didn't Abayi concur that they're able to free this woman because they were acting inappropriately with this Evet? So explains the Gemara, you know why? Hashta hasam. In that case, she was half Evet, half Ben Chayrin, and that's the reason why they freed her, because she was in no man's land. A Yid couldn't marry her, and a guy couldn't marry her. But Halcha, in our case, Abayi held you could give her an Evet, Umantir law, and the Evet will watch her. So it's better to try to avoid freeing, in a case where we have no choice, that the only way to prevent them from doing Yisurim with this woman is by making her not an Eved, then we would allow to do that, like in that case where she's half Eved, half Ben Chayrin. But in our case, because there's another way to avoid it, we should try to figure out a way to avoid it. Continues the Gemara 5 lines down, Lamachesem Beis, Kufa, says the Gemara. Kufa. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kol HaMeshacher Avda Yover Ba'aseh, Shenemar Le'lemem Ta'avodu. That was the din that we just saw in the bottom of Amud Aleph. Meisvei asked the Gemara, Meis Rav Elazar nechlas basic and essence lo matzah sara v'shecharav deva shlim l'asara. He freed his eved to be the 10th man for a minyan. So how can you tell me it's a mitzvah d'oraisa? Answers the Gemara, mitzvah shiny for the mitzvah, it's different. Now why precisely for a mitzvah we're letting someone being over in Issa d'oraisa is a sugya unto itself. We continue, Tana Rabbanon. Continuing this din, what is the problem with potentially freeing an evet? Tana Rabbanon. We are 10 lines down. The first one on line is La'ilam. La'ilam Emdava I do is a rishos. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says it is optional. You have permission to buy one as an evet. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chayva. No, it is obligatory to work the avadim. V'dilma Rav Elazar like command rishos. Ask the Gemara, maybe Rav Elazar holds that is a rishos, and that's the reason why he held it in Issa d'oraisa, and therefore why is it in Issa d'oraisa to free the Eved? Answers the Gemara, lo salig daitach. Why? The Tani behad Rav Elazar Omer chayva. And now we continue discussing further the Isser to free an Eved. Amar Rabba, bahani telas mili nachti balei baitim min achayseim. And for these 3 items, people lose all their wealth. Number 1, the mafkad the cherus they free an eved. Seemingly, so not only is it a d'oraisa to free the eved, causes one to become poor. Number 2, the desire min achasayim b'shabbata. One looks over his property on Shabbos, he's Isaac in some level of business. And number 3, it comes to Rasa b'shabbata bin b'im Jasha. They eat their Shabbos Suda during the drasha zilzal in the Rav in the drasha. Damar Chebar Rabba Rabbi Yechanan. There are 2 families. One would eat on Shabbos, whether the issue over here is that on Erev Shabbos they would eat a big Suda and therefore not have the appetite on Shabbos, well the issue is that they missed the drasha, but that was the reason why these families were uprooted from Klal Yisrael. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav, HaMakdish Avdi Yatzal Chirs. Someone who's Makdish, someone consecrates his Eved, gives his Eved literally to the Beis HaMikdash, the Eved goes free. My timer, says the Gemara, Kufa like Kaddish, because you can't actually make the body of an Eved holy. L'demei like Kamar, he didn't say that the value is going to the Beis HaMikdash. T'levei Am Kaddish Kamar, so what do you mean? He meant that this Eved should be the part of the Am Kaddish. He should become a full-fledged Yid, and that is the reason why the Eved goes free. That is the din of Rav Amarav. Rav Yosef Amarav, a similar but different din. Hamafkir avdayot l'cheiros. Not if someone is a makdish, someone who's mafkir, he makes his Eved ownerless. Ma'idchsim makdish, according to the first opinion, kolshkin mafkir, that he goes free. But mandabar mafkir aval makdish loy, why not double l'demei ka'amar? Because maybe what he really meant is l'demei, that he wants the Eved to go for its value. He wants to give the value to the Beis HaMikdash. And begins the Gemara, Yibayi Lahu, Tzarech Ket Shichrar Arloi Tzarech. We're about 25 lines to the bottom. First word on the line is L'Demei Ka'amar. Asks the Gemara, in the aforementioned case, that the Eved is going free either because he was made Hefker or because he was Makdish, does the owner have to write him a Gech Cheiris? Tashema proves the Gemara, Dam Rav Chebar Avin Amarav, Echazev Echazev Yotzel Cheiros, Vitzarech Get Shechra. And that was that statement of Rav Chebar Avin Amarav that we spoke about in Amar Aleph. That we see you need to get Shechra. Amar Rabba, Masfina Shemaitin, and we asked on this. Hamakdish l'chasavay ben avadim says in a brisa, if someone makes all properties hektish, and amongst his properties he has slaves. Ein hagizbarim r'shayin lo'yitzi an l'cheiros. The gizbarim, those who are in charge of the Beis HaMikdash, are not allowed to release the avadim to freedom. Aval meichan, they sell them la'acheirim v'acheirim lo'yitzi l'cheiros. They sell them, and someone else could free them. Rabbi Omer, and you know what I hold? The Eved himself could pay for himself, and then he can leave. If he's selling himself. So asks the Gemara, this is a kasha on Rav, because both Rebbe and the Tanakam are holding that if someone is makdish and Eved, what is the story? It means l'demei. It means the value should go to the Beis HaMikdash, and not that the Eved himself goes free. Answers the Gemara, Masnizid Karamat Alei de Rav. Really? You're asking from Rav, from a Mishnah? Rav, Tanu Palik. Rav is not to argue with the Mishnah. And one more kasha and Rav, Toshema, 13 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Upalik. Ach kol cheirem v'goymer. says the pasuk any chayrim that a man's going to declare chayrim is going to be kodesh kodashim to Hashem. May Adam elu avadim shev chaysav aknanim. When the pasuk says Adam, that's for to his slaves and his maidservants who are Jewish. So what do we see? We see that you could be makdish them because the pasuk says kadosh kadashim kol chayrim, including avadim. Answers the Gemara. No, he said that the value should be holy. Ask the Gemara. If that's true, so then the other case, the first price should also be demei. The Gemara says that can't be. Because if he said it to me, then what do the Gizbarim have to do with anything? And furthermore, what do the previous prices say? You sell it and they make it free. If he sell it to me, then what are Chayrim getting involved? And thirdly, what do the prices say? Rabbi Yomi say that the Evi could buy himself. And the Gemara leaves that with all these questions that clearly the first brace is not referring to de may. And we'll stop over here. We'll pick it up from Tashema, in which we're going to continue having some issues with this din of Rabbah. But we'll pick it up from here in the next year. B'siyata dishmayu.